Hi, and welcome to this episode of Brainy Moms, brought to you today by Learning RX Brain Training Centers. I'm your host, Dr. Amy Moore, here with my co-host, Terry Miller, coming to you today from Colorado Springs, Colorado. We're excited to welcome our guest just up the road a couple of hours in Steamboat Springs, Colorado, Jessica Speer. Jessica is an award-winning author of BFF or NRF, Not Really Friends, A Girl's Guide to Happy Friendships, and her new book, Middle School, Safety Goggles Advised. Her interactive books are engaging and they entertain readers by combining the stories of preteens and teens with fun activities like quizzes and fill in the blanks, blending humor and a dash of science and practical insights. Her writing unpacks the tricky stuff that peaks during adolescence. Jessica has a master's degree in social sciences and explores social emotional topics in ways that connect with kids. And we're super excited to have her a second time with us today.
Yep. So glad to have you back, Jessica.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be back with you both. Thank you for having me. And thanks for the great introduction.
Oh, good. Yeah. Well, so before we dig in, I want you to tell our listeners a little about your background. We heard that the first time we interviewed you, but for those that are just tuning in the first time, tell them a little bit about how you came to be an expert on middle school trauma for girls.
Okay, so how did I get into this? I started, it's been over 10 years now. Inspired much in part by my kids. So I have a background in social sciences and two daughters. And when my girls hit elementary school, I noticed things started to get complicated. So that really made me curious. And I dove into information about kids' friendships and research. That prompted a friendship program that I ran that grew into my first book. And then when that came out, I then had middle schoolers and things got even more interesting. So again, as a social scientist, this made me curious. And where I like to go in addition to, looking at the latest research is to talk to kids. So for my second book, I spent a lot of time in seventh grade classrooms doing just that, talking to kids. What is it like to be a middle schooler these days? What is the trickiest parts? And hear some of their stories. And then after lots of those conversations and blending that with research, I just recently released this second book called Middle School Safety Goggles Advised.
So obviously you titled that for a reason, Safety Goggles Advised for a reason, right? So what is it about middle school that is so tricky for kids?
Yeah, well, there's a lot that's tricky, and I wanted to have fun with that. And I wanted to also just shed light on the awkwardness. So this whole book shines light on the tricky, awkward stuff, the safety goggles is a reference to science. So whenever I could, I pull in a little bit of human behavior science because it's so helpful to know, why are we doing these things? Why do humans have a tendency to gossip? Why do we have a tendency to create groups and cliques? It's just knowing the why helps us make more informed choices on our very own behavior.
Yeah, I love how you, as a scientist myself, I loved your references to, you go, so here's a not so scientific question for you to answer, or this is a science, not really research. I mean, it was super cute how you built that in so that it makes it engaging, for the middle schooler to be like, oh, this is going to be a boring science experiment. No, it's not. This is a humorous book, that is welcoming to me.
Yeah. Well, it makes it engaging for the mom of the middle schooler too. That's so, it's just, you have such an approachable writing style. Just quick, easy read, encouraging, informational. And I'm saying that from the mom of a middle schooler perspective. So the first time you were here, had my 6th and 7th grader, and now they're older going into the next grade. So my daughter, Serena, is going into 8th grade. My son, Nakota, is going into 7th grade, and they are smack in the middle of what you're talking about. And it is such a complicated time.
Oh, it is.
Oh my goodness. Their hormones, the changes in their bodies and their friendships that shift. And oh my goodness, it's a hard time. And I want to talk about what I'm seeing that's so different than even what we experienced, or even what my older kids, my kids that are 28, 27, 26, they went through something different it was different for them because now social media is in the mix. And if that's
Mm-hmm.
all right, I'd love to jump in on that right away because it is so important. It has changed things. Talk about social media in the realm of this middle school adventure and struggle.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you brought that up. In fact, the students brought that up. So when I asked, what are the trickiest things, that was definitely up there. Social media. It's a love-hate relationship for them. They love the ability to connect with their peers all the time, because a lot of them have their phones all night long. So they are connecting all the time, but there's so much pressure to stay informed as to what's happening, pressure to look a certain way, pressure to, know everything that's going on all the time. So the FOMO thing. So they they feel that, and I heard that over and over. So the quotes were often like, it's a great way to connect, but I'm often judging myself on the number of likes I get. So I just kept hearing that over and over, and this generation has not known anything different. But what's interesting to me, what also came up as one of the top 10 topics, that were tricky, was stress. And I think this contributes to that. Just this, it's another added stress. When we were kids, we could just leave school and be done. And now it's not over. It's just beginning. Actually, you leave school and then everything's happening online. People are chatting and connecting and sharing things. And so it does ramp up the pressure on kids in so many ways. And we just recently heard in the news, the famous Facebook files, that they are seeing that a really vulnerable part of our population are preteen girls. So they are in a insecure, vulnerable place just developmentally. So much is changing with them, and now all of a sudden they also have to put themselves out there, and they have to look a certain way, and they can really see what they're invited to and what they're not invited to. So I don't want to sound like Debbie Downer, like this is really horrible, but it's definitely changed middle school and the preteen years in a huge way, and added a lot of pressure on kids that we didn't have to deal with.
Right. There's no respite.
Yeah.
There's no relief from that social pressure, that anxiety, that concern of what do people think? How am I interacting if I don't respond right away, if I don't snap back? It's just constant. And so how, as a mom, how can I know there are some schools of thought where it's like, no, you just take their phone away, you take screens away. And I don't happen to be that kind of mom, because I don't know. I've experienced that some with my older kids, and it didn't work very effectively, caused a lot of backlash. So how, as a mom, can I help encourage them to find respite from that, to get some rest from that onslaught, but without controlling, taking their phone away?
Yeah, and we definitely, as always, have to come from a place of just not sounding like we're judging them and criticizing them and their whole generation for this. So we have to come at this with empathy, but helping to raise their awareness in many ways. One thing that I've been really focusing on is I don't think kids realize, that the social media is their real marketing machines. Their goal is to keep you online. So they use persuasive design techniques to keep you scrolling, to keep, you tag people, you're in a streak on Snapchat, you're in, so there's little maneuvers. So I like to bring their attention to that, so they know, they're informed consumers of what they're using, that, they actually are trying to keep you online. So, as non-judgmentally as I can, just sharing the business model of some of these things, and then also helping them understand how they're feeling after spending time online. There's been some really interesting studies done, especially on girls, that they can change their whole mood based on their feed. So if they, and so algorithms work in a way that we start watching the same exact things over and over. So what we like, they send us more of that, especially on like TikTok and things like that. So if we go down a rabbit hole that is, really, it's just crushing us as a preteen person, it's crushing us. We can change that feed, and they've shown that can change how you feel. So encourage your kids to follow things that are inspiring them, follow things that are, bring out the best in you, and log off to the things that aren't. So stop following them and just noticing what things they are letting go in their lives. I know my oldest teen daughter this summer, she went off TikTok just cold. And she came to this on her own. She realized, I used to read a ton of books, and she just noticed that in herself, like, I don't even read anymore because I spent so much time on TikTok. So she just went off it on her own. So helping them notice what's being displaced in their lives because they're spending so much time online, and just finding that balance. The social media is not going away, but how can we find a balance so that we're tapping into our best selves? We're still cultivating the parts of ourselves that we want to continue to grow and continue to learn and continue to achieve. So it's a balancing act, and ongoing conversations that families are having these days.
Yeah.
So I love that you brought up that algorithm. I don't think in all of the conversations that we've had about the detriments of social media on kids, have we ever had anyone make that suggestion? Because typically the suggestion is, well, they need to be off social media, or we need to limit social media, or we need to block certain people. But never have I heard that suggestion to trick the algorithm in your favor. Right.
Yes.
To follow what brings you joy, what you're passionate about,
So
what you
good.
love to see more of. So then it pushes down the feed, the things that you don't want to see or that make you feel bad about yourself. And so I think that's absolutely genius. So
Yeah.
thank you for that recommendation.
Yeah.
And I stumbled upon a great study that was done. I think it was out of the UK on exactly this. And they noticed a change in girls. They noticed a change if they switch their feed off of, just, lots of things on beauty or whatever it might be to something that was really inspiring to them. They noticed a significant change in their mood. So that, and then also having two teens that have gone down this rabbit hole, so they're very concerned about climate. So they'll watch a lot of videos, and sometimes you can watch so many videos that it was just they feel hopeless, so they even, we talked about that, it's I love it, that is a passion of theirs, they really care about that, but they have to watch how much of that they're watching, because it can bring you into such a dark place. So just being aware of that, the tech side of this is really important. And I feel like for this generation, we haven't caught up with the putting the guardrails yet on technology. So kids are receiving the short end of this stick this day and age, because we have not caught up as far as legislation and regulation goes. So we kind of have to do that as parents, and it's super intimidating, to try to take that on. But actually, I just wrote my third book on this topic, so I will share with you guys, coming out next summer. It's called The Phone Book, and it goes into all this, because I think it's really important for kids and families to know what is happening in technology that we are not even aware of, And so the smarter we are about how technology works, the better we're going to be able to guide our kids.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right. So that's one tricky area that you identified in all of your talking with the middle school kids.
Yep.
What else stood out to you?
The thing that I was surprised, because I think sometimes parents, we think, this is in their head. What came out the most was judgment by peers, and sometimes I think we as parents think, they just feel like they're being judged, but no, I get story after story of them actually being judged by their peers. And I remember that too. Sometimes I think it was a blend of me feeling like I was being judged by my peers and then actually being judged. So it's hard to know, what the balance there is. But I kept hearing over and over, judgment by peers, so people judging you for what you wear or what you say or who you hang out with. And so that was really real. So that's where I started with in the book. I'm like, chapter 1, harsh judgment, because what a great place to start. I think that feeds so many other things that are happening, so harsh judgment of our peers feeds gossip, and it feeds drama, and it feeds, cliques and groups. So I thought, okay, perfect. Let's start there. And why do we judge each other as humans? It tends to be, when we are in a place of, feeling threatened or feeling insecure, and, talk about middle school, feeling threatened and insecure, that's middle school. So, what I love though is kids really knew that's why this was happening, and I was always just blown away by their wisdom of knowing why this is going on. They knew that this is happening because kids are kind of in a place of insecurity or, so, but I think where it gets tricky is they don't know how to navigate that. And that makes sense because this is really the first time in their lives that they are dealing with some of these things. So I think we as parents can come just knowing that, like, of course, this is hard because you've never had to deal with this sort of stuff before. So let's talk about some strategies as to how to deal with that. If somebody really, says something that cuts you to the bone or, so it's hard. And then they're kind of starting almost from ground zero. I mean, this stuff ramps up quite significantly from elementary school. So, they are not quite ready as far as how they're going to respond, how they're going to react. So it feels really big. And then of course emotions are big during this phase of life too. So I can see why this was mentioned the most. Harsh judgment. And Terry, do you find that with your kids? Do they tell you stories of that's happening at their school?
Yeah. My son, I hear him more. He talks about the feeling of it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, but a boy, it's different, I think, and I know you shouldn't say, oh, boys and girls are different, whatever, but they just are the way they interact. And I've seen that my son deals with the feeling of being judged because maybe some friends will kind of withdraw and they kind of hang together and he'll feel like, well, because I don't have a soccer ball yet, they're all playing with their soccer balls and kicking them around. And I'm judged because I don't have a soccer ball and I'm not part of that soccer ball group and, weird little things like that. And then he'll be devastated that he doesn't have a soccer ball.
Yeah.
And it comes out at me. I can't believe I've been asking for 2 weeks for a soccer ball and my life is over because I don't have a soccer ball. And the thing is, as a parent, I want to go, buddy, give me a break.
Yeah.
But I feel like what your book brings light to, and what I've learned through the years, because I've got a lot of kids, I've got older ones, is that my response has to be, I am so sorry. This feels so heavy.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about how we can get you a soccer ball. And I want to be here for you. And I love you. And I want to try to help you. And I think you're valuable. And I don't know, do these things to try to comfort, but not minimize that his life is actually over because he doesn't have a soccer ball yet.
Yeah.
Because he feels that it is.
Mm-hmm. And I love that. That's your response. Because it is a huge deal to them. They're feeling, I think the sense that I got is that kids feel like the ground is kind of shifting beneath them. They're not exactly sure where their friendship stands. They're not sure where they stand in the whole hierarchy status thing. They're not even sure who they are as, individuals. So the ground feels shaky. So I love that that's your response, because they need us to take this seriously and to be there for them and to have their back. I mean, that doesn't mean, to spoil them rotten, but to hear the struggle, hear how uncomfortable things are. And, when I was writing this book, I was like, oh my gosh, some of the things felt really honest and raw, but I'm like, you know what? This is what they told me, so I'm putting it in there. This is exactly their word. So this is how it's going in the book. And, I tried to lighten it up and, use some humor, but I wanted to really share the depth of the hardness of it, that it is hard. And it's also a really critical period. So even though it's hard and uncomfortable, it's a time where they're starting to figure out how to do this, and it's not easy, and there's lots of bumps in the road, but what I've found now, having some high schoolers and watching the kids that I've worked with in the past, they learn who they are and they learn how they want to navigate these things. And it's so beautiful towards the end of this. In the middle you're like, oh my gosh, is my kid okay? But watching the tail end of this, like, oh, cool, they're getting this, and they kind of have a sense of how to navigate this, and they have a sense of who they are and how they want to be in the world. So it's a cool process, but it's uncomfortable for parents and kids alike.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, like, the opposite, like with Serene, girls being different with that judgment thing. The thing I've noticed that, again, is different from when my older kids were in middle school. And even when we were in middle school, we felt it. We felt that judgment. But it seems that it is more blatant now in these insidious social media and texting ways. So that what my daughter's experienced is, like she went through a hard time and was just kind of pretty down for a few weeks with dealing with some hard stuff. And she had a friend within a friend group that was just like, oh my gosh, quit complaining. Can you just look on the bright side? But didn't say those things to her, did things like posted within their group that they all follow each other, did things like, optimistic people are so great to be around, and people that
Oh,
complain, or you know what I mean? So it's this
yes.
weird manipulative stuff that goes on. And so they're following each other's feeds and liking it and whatever. And so this is really happening. And like,
Mhm.
we as parents have to understand, they are not just feeling it. Yeah, it doesn't seem like a direct attack, but the way social media works, it is.
Yeah.
And they're feeling it that way. When that friend posts something that seems general, but it's directed at the little bit of a conversation they had, that hurts.
Oh, it
That's so
totally hurts.
hard.
It totally hurts. And so, and what I guess I see happening there is there was a conflict. And instead of this person going directly to your daughter and privately talking
Yeah.
about this, they decide to indirectly share it in in a more public space. And it
Mhm.
just amplifies it. It
Yeah.
amplifies it. And yeah, oh boy, yeah, you're so right. And yeah, it's a tricky
So
time.
hard.
So I can recall, my middle school years. Um, I went to a private, very wealthy private middle school. And the only reason I got to go to this private school is because my dad was a teacher there. So I got free tuition, right? So there was this store that was called the Porcupine. I will never forget. It was all the designer clothes. And so all of these kids got their clothes from there. And my parents couldn't afford the clothes from the Porcupine. And so I just remember being teased that I did not have designer labels on my clothes in middle school. And so that was just a wave that I had to ride out, right? At least it wasn't on social media, but it was just this wave of inadequacy that I had to ride out.
Mhm.
So are we telling our kids today, it will pass, ride this out? Or are there some strategies that we can give them to help build their sense of resilience? Or what are your recommendations? Like, as parents, how can we support our kids when they're in that storm?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's one of the things I try to tackle in this book, because a lot of the behaviors that we're seeing, some of the harsh judgment and the gossip and, just aggressive and mean behaviors is everybody's unique way of trying to fit in, trying to belong, trying to gain some status, so that is the theme that I just keep coming back to. And so as parents, we can keep coming back to our kids with that too. So what we can help our kids not do is internalize it that there's something wrong with me. What's happening here is all these kids entering a new phase of development where it's super important for everybody to feel like, yeah, they're part of a group or they're cool, or so encouraging kids or just helping them see the big picture. That doesn't make it any easier, but always coming back to that there's nothing wrong with you. This is what's happening around you, and these are tough years for that, but it does change. And what I've found is that by the middle of high school, things really settle out. So this whole thing kind of peaks maybe a freshman year, and then it kind of settles out quite a bit. So just keeping that light out there, being a sounding board, letting them know that all these tough emotions are hard, helping them think through their choices. And this is where it gets hard because things are so complicated. Often our knee-jerk, solutions are not going to work at all. So being aware that our solutions are not often helpful at all. So helping them come up with what are some of their possible solutions and what are the solutions that put forth the best of you. So it's possible not to get mired in the unsavory stuff going on. So thinking through how can you navigate this in a way that kind of shows the person you want to be or you are. So it's helping them think through that, and it's not easy, and it's ongoing. but super important. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I love the idea of having those conversations where they help problem solve, where they
Yep.
help come up with a strategy
Mhm.
that they're comfortable with. Because a lot of times we think, hey, just say this to them or
Yeah.
just
Right.
try this. And that's our language. And that's
Right.
our initial, this is how I would handle it. Right. Well, that doesn't necessarily fit our children's personalities or their
Mhm.
comfort zone. Right. I mean, like that doesn't feel like them. And so if they're not owning the potential solution, then
Yep.
how can they implement that
Mm-hmm.
effectively and comfortably?
Mm-hmm. Yep. And to pick their battles, we all pick our battles, and sometimes, you just choose not to engage. You see how it turns out. Sometimes, something comes up, it blows up, and then it just settles away. So just let them pick their battles. Sometimes the wait and see is an okay way to go, because it would be
Mhm.
exhausting if we responded to every single thing that came up.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's good right there. Yeah. I'm thinking about with Serene. And I do think, I know this is a lot of your focus, your research is directed at girls.
Mhm.
I mean, this new book is just middle school. It's wonderful. But I do think there is a unique pain for girls in this area because for some reason, socially, culturally, communication, I don't know, we're more mean girls, like the movie. It's
Yeah.
it's more a mean girls phase. Um and I've tried to help my daughter see that instead of responding to maybe some of those passive aggressive jabs, that show up in their social media circle or whatever, like that really are attacks. They all know, since they were in conversation about it, they all know that's directed at that one girl. That instead of responding to it, defending, arguing, getting upset, how about sit back and just continue to be who you are? Because those mean girls know that that was a mean girl thing. And so we can just let it play out. You don't have to interact. I mean, what do you think about that as one encouragement? What do you think? I don't know.
Yeah, and so this kind of gets us back to where and let's talk about gossip, because I feel like
Yeah.
that is, for girls, sometimes that is a way that they are trying to manage conflict in a not very healthy way. So
Mhm.
everybody gossips. We all probably gossip to some degree, and especially like so in middle school, it might be as innocent as just knowing what's going on in your community, like who likes who or who just got expelled, or So we gossip is just talking about other people that when they're not there, but then it can cross a line into in the book I talk about it as toxic, and so when things get toxic is when it's really one-sided. It's usually a conflict that someone is, instead of talking directly to the person, they're kind of going around them, to indirectly address the situation, and so therefore they're kind of pulling other people into this thing, and it creates drama. So that right there, it's what I have seen is it can be girls notice who are the ones that are just taking people down, and they lose trust in those. And
Right.
so over time, there's things happening behind the scenes. People are more cautious. They might not want to go deep in a friendship with somebody because they've kind of seen that this person actually can be pretty cruel to people, and are not very trustworthy. So just all we can do is encourage our kids to, try to put out there, the qualities that you want to have in friendships. So if you want to be a trustworthy person, don't be the one that's doing that. If you have a conflict with somebody, even if it's super hard and uncomfortable, can you go directly to that person instead of, a roundabout way to try to deal with this, instead of dealing directly with the problem. So yeah, that it's a tricky one. And I would say for girls especially, this is where things get so complicated, and it hurts. It hurts to know that you've got friends that are talking about you in a way that you don't appreciate. It's really hard. I don't want to just not emphasize how hard that is for girls, because girls really do want to connect. And just because girls are developmentally a little bit farther along than boys, they are looking for, starting in middle school, a little deeper connections. So elementary is all about play. And, once we get to middle school, they're looking for some tighter relationships filled with trust where they can really talk about things that are important to them. And that's where things can get really messy. Because if they start sharing some things that are really important to them and it's in a relationship that isn't filled with trust yet, oh boy, the bottom can fall out and that can just break kids' heart, but really important lessons learned there, to kind of let friendships grow to that level of trust instead of immediately, which is sad. I wish we could immediately just, open up to people in a certain way. But in middle school, we might want to let those relationships grow to a place where we have developed that level of trust with each other to really share some things that, are private information for us.
So good.
Yeah. So speaking of wanting those closer relationships and connections, let's talk about crushes and dating a little bit that starts emerging in those, especially those late middle school years. What's the tricky, what's happening that makes that so tricky?
And these were some of the most fun conversations that I had with the kids because they really wanted to talk about this. So we started with crushes, and of course, there's going to be tons of crushes in middle school, and there's a huge scale. I talk about the crush scale. Some people are way high on the crush scale; they've crush after crush, and then others are just not even there yet. So again, there's this big range of where kids are developmentally, and for the most part, crushes are kind of fun, but there are those breaches of trust where somebody isn't quite ready for their friend to share their crush and their friend shared anyway, and so that causes some conflict and drama. But for the most part, kids thought the thing was, the whole crush scene was kind of funny and entertaining. It really ramps up if there's a dance coming. All of a sudden, there's this matchmaking thing. But where I found things got uncomfortable for kids is all of a sudden, so two people have a crush, or say they dance at a dance, the gossip starts, and their friends start really pushing them to, in quote, date. So, so you can't just have like an innocent crush, or, that things are quickly like pushed into, oh, you guys have to date. In middle school dating is, from what I heard, it's nothing like adult dating. It's, you might not even see each other. It might just be more of a text relationship, but kids were clear that their kids are dating because they're being pressured into it, and also there's some status assigned to that. So only certain groups are only dating, and they're dating within that group. And again, dating in quotes, because not really going out on dates very much. They might go as a small group or something, but it's mostly, online chats and things like that. But the one of the best quotes I got was, dances would be so much more fun if there wasn't all of a sudden this pressure to date. Like, why can't we just have a dance and dance with somebody instead of all this pressure then? Like, if you dance with somebody, game on, everybody pounces on you. And so, there's a little bit of fun to that, but it also takes away some of the fun. And all of a sudden it ramps things up, from what I heard, farther than kids were ready to go.
Yeah. The status thing of, I'm dating someone. I mean, we used to call it what? Going steady,
Yep.
We said going together. We
going
didn't even say the
together.
word steady. Are you going with him? Yeah, which I know it didn't make any sense. Going where?
I know. Yep. I know, but dating doesn't make sense either from our perspective, because we're like, you're going to go on a date, you're 13, but whatever, but we got to take it seriously. Yeah.
Yep. So, so I just, in the book, I talk about, just, you don't have to put those pressures on your friends, like just you can enjoy the crush, but if your friend really doesn't want to be pressured into that, just let them, not pressure them, just let that go, so who knows, I'm sure that will never take hold, because I remember that too. I remember that whole scene so clearly, but there's a lot of pressure there, once the crush is revealed, there's a lot of pressure there that goes with it.
Yeah. And I think there's pressure. What I've seen with my daughter is there's pressure to say, there's pressure from other people or from social circles to say that there's a relationship when there's not. Mm-hmm. So for example, Serene and Nakota have been friends. Like we've been family friends for years with two other boys that have about that same age gap. So the younger boy is, just dear friends with Nakota. And then the older son is they're all four. It's not even like, this older son and Serene are better friends. They're just all four this wonderful, fun group that have been together since they were itty bitty. And so now this boy is turning into a young man. He's 14. He's just handsome and sweet. And Serene is turning into a beautiful young woman. Well, they still just play like kids.
Yep.
They run around outside and ride bikes and want to go hiking. And so we still, like the mom and I, we're super good friends. They still have sleepovers, and like they do these camping sleepovers. And they're all in this like big tent, sprawled out in sleeping bags. And it's not weird and it's not awkward and it's completely fine, because Serena's like, he's like my brother.
Yes.
A friend will say, oh, do you like him? Are y'all dating? And she's, no, gross. He's like my brother. But there is all this pressure on her because they spend a lot of time together, because the soccer game comes up and the four just come together and they just, talk and connect. And then her friends are like, oh, you're dating him. Oh my goodness. And what do you do with that? And as a parent, what do you do with that? How do you help encourage your middle schooler to have friends of the opposite sex? That's okay. And you can be friends without it having to be dating. What about that little tricky piece? Talk about that.
Well, I love her response. She's got that down. And so helping them with these little responses like, oh, he's like my brother. So if they have in their pocket a few little responses like that, we've been friends since we were 2, or, just like those little things that they could say that will quell, the rumor mill, they can just pull those out. And I love that she's just doing that. And her response says it all. Her body language, the words she says are like, oh, and they move on, like, oh, okay, move on to the next thing. So just helping our kids with those little phrases just to shut down those things, so like in one sentence, like, no, we've been friends for a long time. That just done. Okay, move on. So again, some of this is like that the developmental phase where they're kind of excited for the stuff that happens in high school. They're not in high school yet. But they're excited to see, ooh, some things are happening, So it's again, staying aware of their community and their peers and who's doing what. So some of it is just innocent, but it does help if you can just like right off the bat have something that just shuts it down in a nice, kind way. Like, no, you gotta be kidding me. And then, it can just move on, because it's always circulating. The lunchroom would be such a quiet place. If this wasn't happening in the lunchroom, it would be silent. It's happening all the time.
Yeah.
Right. And kids are looking for that dopamine rush that just like we are all the time. Right.
Yeah.
And so these types of conversations bring that. And,
Yep. And it's fun and it's exciting. I remember, stories of the dance, and there was always the kids that were like the matchmakers, and that was their whole role at the dance. It's like matchmaking, so some of it is super fun. And then some of it does cross a line where it's all of a sudden, in a space where the kids actually didn't want to be, so just having as much fun with you, as fun with it as you can, but also knowing when you need to just set a boundary and say, hey, nope, that's not what's happening.
Yeah. All right, so we need to take a break and let Terry read a word from our sponsor. And when we come back, we'd like you to just give our listeners an overview of your book. Like, what were the key areas that you identified in your research, and then how your book can help middle schoolers? Like, how's it laid out? What types of activities do you have them do? Things like that when we come back.
Are you concerned about your child's reading or spelling performance? Are you worried your child's reading curriculum isn't thorough enough? Well, most learning struggles aren't the results of poor curriculum or instruction. They're typically caused by having cognitive skills that need to be strengthened. Skills like auditory processing, memory, and processing speed. Learning RX one-on-one brain training and structured literacy programs are designed to target and strengthen the skills that we rely on for reading, spelling, writing, and learning. Learning RX can help you identify which skills may be keeping your child from performing their best. The Learning RX team would like to help get your child on the path to a brighter and more confident future. Join the growing list of more than 100,000 children and adults trained at Learning RX. Give Learning RX a call at brain01 or visit learningrx.com. That's learningrx.com.
And we're back talking to Jessica Speer, social scientist and award-winning author, who is talking about her latest book, Middle School Safety Goggles Advised. So Jessica, talk to us about the interactiveness of your book and what types of other problems are addressed, and how our listeners' kids could really benefit from that.
Yeah. So, I mentioned that this book goes into really awkward, tricky stuff. So I had to figure out a way, how can I actually get middle schoolers to actually want to read this? So it's filled with interactive stuff. So every chapter starts with a little self quiz, just to get their head in the game, and on the topic. So, the first chapter is on harsh judgment. So a couple questions on that. And then, throughout the chapter, there's ways for them to engage. Every chapter also includes a choose your own ending, which is my favorite part. And this idea came from students. Choose your own ending. So when I was working with kids, I kept hearing a lot of similar stories of what happens in middle school. A simple one is like, the dance is coming and you and your friend have a crush on the same person, and so then what do you do? Option A, option B, option C, and the story unfolds. And that what I love about that is it gives the reader a chance to see the way this could unfold based on how they choose to respond. So, there isn't one right answer. Sometimes the answer that is most likely is you see, oh, how that worked out wasn't maybe the best, but that's the most likely response sometimes in middle school. But it's great even to see that, so that part allows kids a chance to think through their choices, maybe even before they're in this situation. So yeah, and of course the book is filled with tons of quotes from kids themselves. Like I said earlier, they had so much wisdom as to what's really going on beneath the surface. So the chapters have what I call antidotes, to things like antidotes to peer pressure, antidotes to gossip and drama. And so kids wrote the most amazing things. I would give them just a little slip of paper. I'm like, so what would you tell an incoming middle schooler how to deal with this? And I was blown away with what they wrote down. So those ideas are weaved in the book too.
I think the timing of this is really good. We've got a few, I'm assuming this is going to air pretty quick. We've got a little bit of time left of summer, a few weeks left of summer, and then school just starting. And I think that's a great time for parents of middle schoolers and middle school kids to dig into things like this before that overwhelm begins. And I've seen this in my kids, and I would imagine you've probably seen this in the kids that you've worked with. Once they're in the thick of it and the tears are already there, and those girls were so mean, and I can't believe she said that. And I think then trying to dig in and like be calm and do these interactive things, that's harder. And so I would encourage listeners, don't wait, jump on this. It's a great time. Help your kiddo navigate some of this right now. They're not overwhelmed with schoolwork yet. They're probably not totally overwhelmed with all the social craziness that's going to come once school starts. So this is a great time to love them well. And I would say, quick read through it as a parent, but don't try to spoon feed it to your kid and then say, hey, I got this for you, and let your kiddo dig in, maybe without hovering too much.
Yeah. Just let them read it through at their own pace, because it will give them some tools for their toolbox, like what are my choices. So I think that what I try to do is just lay that out as clearly as I could. You've got choices in all these situations. You've got a lot of choices, and sometimes it's hard to know that when we're in the thick of it. We're just so overwhelmed with the situation and our emotions. We forget about our choices. So yeah, thank you for saying that. It is a great time before things really start getting busy with the school year in full session.
Yeah.
And so do you recommend to parents, is this a hands-off book for them? I mean, once they've looked through it and given it to their middle schooler, is that top secret now?
And I think we have to give our middle schoolers a lot leeway there. I would love to say, read it with them and, put
Yeah.
some of every chapter has the final word, which is like the lowdown on that topic, put that out in the fridge. But the truth is that might be too much for a middle schooler, but if you privately read it, so you've kind of got it in your head, it's going to bring you right back to middle school. So you find that empathy and understanding of their world. So if you read it privately and then, they read it on their own time, I think we can't beat anything too hard when they're this age, because that will turn them off. So yeah, just gently guiding them, leaving it out, putting in their room, maybe some conversation starters, but yeah, we can't be overly involved, especially in middle school. They need to start taking the lead.
Great
And I think
advice.
it's a great tool also, if we can jump on it right now and, and encourage, I'd get 2 copies minimum for my, and encourage them to read it. Hey, this is a fun one to work through. This is your copy. You just write in, it's yours. Make it this your journal. And, remember last year you really struggled with so-and-so, and she's got some great ideas that really might help you. And so then let it set, let them work with it. And I'm imagining that this is going to be a fantastic tool then 2 months from now, when this same thing pops up, that I can say, oh, Serene, honey, I'm so sorry. Gosh, you know what? That so reminds me of Jessica Spear's, remember that book, Jessica Spear's chapter on gossip. Golly. Yeah, you know what? That same thing she described as happening. I wonder, what did her book say about that?
Yeah. One of the chapters I feel like is the most helpful is popularity, because that was another topic that came up big time. Like, what is weird and tricky about middle school and the whole popularity scene. So I dive deep into that because there's a ton of research on what is actually happening, and middle school popularity is different from popularity in other stage of life. So in middle school, this other sort of popularity surfaces, and it's more of a status popularity. So in early elementary school, popularity is not really a thing, but if somebody's popular, it's because they're likable, and I'll put that in quotes. And likable is somebody who is cooperative and they share and they're good listeners. They make people feel good about themselves. So that's how you're popular in elementary school. In middle school, there's still that, but then this other sort of popularity surfaces. It's status, and this is more about kind of being nice some days, mean some days. They have more notoriety, they have more influence on the group and more power. And sometimes that power comes from maybe some pro-social as well as some antisocial behaviors. Maybe there's some aggressiveness there. So this status popularity is complicated, and kids told me that these people are popular, but not many people like them. They're
Yes.
actually they're more afraid of them. So this is a great conversation to have with your kids, because the trajectory of status popularity, when you look at the research, is not great. Like, those are the kids that start dabbling in substances more. Their relationships suffer, even longer term marriages down the road. Status popularity is not great for well-being of kids. So, when kids are navigating this really complex middle school popularity scene, helping them see, hey, there's more than one type of popularity here. Who are the kids that you really like because they're good people, they're leaders, they're people you want to be around, so those are the ones that, that if those are the skills you want to cultivate, those are the kids that we can use as role models. So yeah, popularity is a big thing in middle school, and that also kind of peaks in early high school and then falls away. It's no longer a thing, especially, the status popularity is, kids are quickly over that in early high school, and those kids sometimes get dropped in a really difficult way. So that's a great ongoing conversation to have, because, like it or not, kids have to figure out how to navigate peer status. It's so much in their world of middle school. They have to figure out who they are and where do they fit and who are their friends. So, like it or not, they have to navigate status, but to keep an eye out for those kids that are the ones that are likable. You want to be around. They make you feel good. They're easy to hang out with. So yeah, the popularity thing. We had some great conversations, and of course, it's complicated in middle school.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is
All
so
right.
good. It's so, this is just such important information and encouragement for parents and for kids in this hard stage. I really appreciate what you've brought and appreciate your book. And yeah, oh my goodness. I don't care if we're the mom or we're the kid. We all need safety goggles.
Yes,
For that
we
stage.
do. Yeah, I just bought some safety goggles for some of my upcoming presentations. I got a lab coat, I got my safety goggles, and and I don't want to get too heavy. And that's why I wanted to write this book in a light way, because
Yeah.
it's easy to get really heavy on this, but there's also really fun and cool and funny things happening too. So let's not forget that, and embrace the awkwardness. One of my favorite dinner questions, as we go around the table is, what was the best thing that happened? What was the most awkward thing? Like, let's just get that out there. It's okay. Let's talk about it. We all have those awkward moments, and it is okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So, how can listeners find you and your new book?
Easiest place to find me is my website, which is Jessica Speer, SPEER.com. And that has links off to all my social and links to all sorts of places you can buy the book. The book is available everywhere books are sold, so you could get it, of course, on Amazon and Target.com and Barnes & Noble. But I always encourage people, if they can get it at their local bookstore, and they might not have it in stock, but they can ask their local bookstore to get it, because our local bookstores are the heart of our community. So let's do everything we can to support our local bookstores.
I love that plug.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, this has been a fantastic conversation. We are so excited that you came back to talk to us, Jessica. And I'm hearing that you'll be back again next year with your third book. So hopefully you'll come back and talk to us.
Oh, I'd love it. Yeah,
too.
let's talk about cell phones. Lots to talk about there. But
Right.
thank you for having me. It's always such a joy. And thank you for the work that you're doing. It's super important. It takes all of us, it takes all of us just to keep kind of diving into this whole parenting thing.
Yep. Thank you.
Absolutely. So listeners, if you would like more information about Jessica and her work, like she said, you can go to her website, jessicaspeer.com. You can find her on Instagram at Jessica_Speer_author. We'll actually put all of her links to her website and her social media handles in our show notes, as well as how to get her book. Thank you so much for listening today. If you liked our show, we would love it if you would leave us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts. If you would rather watch us, we're on YouTube, and you can find us on every single social media channel at The Brainy Moms. So look, until next time, we know that you're busy moms and we're busy moms, so we're out.
See ya.